Hi there, Ali Jen here, leadership coach and Enneagram expert on the topic of conflict. Conflict is something that we are faced with our entire lives and really are not given the tools to manage it. I do think this should be a class like 101 conflict, really starting in grade school, but if not specifically high school, because I notice it's definitely happened to me that when things get uncomfortable, we often are not facing them head on because we don't really have the communication skills, right? So you may be experiencing tension in your relationship, tension at work, tension in your life, whatever it might be. And once you understand how you react to conflict, you can start to manage it and really name it. It's a lot easier going into a conversation saying, oh, I tend to be avoidant with conflict, but there's something I need to talk to you about. That's a lot easier than just, hiding under your desk. So within the Enneagram, there are three kind of ways that Enneagram types manage conflict, and one is to be reactive, one is to be avoidant, and one is to be methodical. And so depending on your type is where you fall. So our first group of reactive Enneagram types, those are gonna be our type 4, our type 6, and our type 8. And so 4s are deep feelers. 6s tend to run anxious or can a little bit. So there's always this feeling of what's next, what's happening. And then 8s are trying to be in control. So you can imagine that if conflict arises, how these types might react. So 4, as a deep feeler, conflict arises and they cannot restrain their emotions. So they are feeling deeply. Sometimes it feels like the weight of the world is on their shoulder. A 6 is that anxiety is gonna heighten, right? Gonna get into that space of maybe fear. And then as an 8, it's gonna be eruptive, right? I can't control this situation and this is what's happening to me. So if you are one of these types or you're walking into a meeting with these types, you kind of know what's ahead of you. So understanding that if you are a reactive Enneagram type, your top priority is to slow down, right? So understand that the conflict arises, you take a moment, you breathe, maybe a little journaling, write down a few sentences like, where am I feeling it in my body? What does this mean? Where am I spiraling? What's happening? Before you take the time to actually have that conversation and engage with someone. So the other type of, or the second type of conflict is avoidant. So the Enneagram types that are conflict avoidant, and you may not be surprised to hear this, would be our Enneagram 2, our Enneagram 7, and our Enneagram 9. The 2, 7, and 9 tend to have a positive outlook, and so there's a lot of reframing that can happen. And so it's a bit easier as a 2, 7, or 9 to just not address the problem. So if a 2 is feeling like there's conflict happening, they may try to kind of maybe silver line it, right? And just try to be overly optimistic or overly helpful in order to get the problem to go away, but not really specifically addressing the issue. A 7 is simply just going to, silver line it and then some, right? The reframe with the 7 is either I'm not gonna address it, or if I address it, it's no big deal, because 7s feel safe when things are positive. And then a 9 is probably just gonna completely avoid it in general, because a 9 is very conflict avoidant. So anytime a conflict comes up, that's their core fear. So they'll just let something pass, and they're willing to sometimes miss opportunities based on the fact that the fear of conflict is so deep. So for these 3 types, the work is to really acknowledge the conflict, acknowledge the problem, look it in the face, right? Take the time to really acknowledge what's happening and then have that conversation. And it's also okay to outline it with the way that you feel. And you can say, I have a really hard time, sitting in the negative, but let's hash this out because I know it's really important for our relationship. Or you can say, I tend to avoid these conversations, but I really think feedback in this space is necessary. And then our other conflict style is methodical. And so the other types that are methodical is our Enneagram 1, our Enneagram 3, and our Enneagram 5. And it's funny because when I did a team training recently and we were talking about conflict styles, someone who was an Enneagram 3 was like, why would you want it any other way but methodical? And to a certain degree, I can understand that or agree with that, because sometimes when you problem solve or you approach conflict, creating a list, creating a strategy, creating a goal outline is very important. But if you do not allow emotions into the equation, you may just keep making the same mistakes, because if you're not tapping into how you feel about something, then I think that conflict can continue to arise. So the work for the 1, 3, and 5 in the methodical approach to conflict is really to access your emotions, right? So completely okay to strategize, but really tapping into how do I feel? Because with the 1, with the motivation to kind of do the right thing, sometimes that can be external or societal expectations. Maybe you don't even align with that, right? So understanding, how do I feel in this situation? What's the conflict about, and how do I want to solve it? And then for the 3, sometimes you're just go, 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 go. So if we think about it as maybe it's even a conflict in a relationship where your partner is saying like, I need more time with you, you work too much, If you're methodical, you're just going to approach it like strangers and just kind of say like, oh, well, we need to earn a living, so in order to do that, I need to do ABC. But if you really step into that space of emotion and think, oh, what is my partner trying to tell me? Okay, they want to be seen and heard. How do I feel about that? Then proceed. And then if you are a 5, you are so cerebral and logical anyway, you haven't really ever thought about approaching a problem without it being methodical. And again, I'm sure that's probably what you're valued for and a lot of the work that you do, but sometimes data and knowledge can't solve everything, right? We have 3 centers of expression in our body. We have our head, and we have our heart, and we have our gut. And if we're not accessing all 3 of those throughout our life, whether it's conflict or day to day, we're not really connecting to our whole selves and I think living into the potential of our whole selves. So I hope this helps you understand a little bit about your conflict type and can help you have elevated conversations, knowing your Enneagram type and that of your partner, your boss, your relationships, whatever it might be.